granted in the early 1900s for a small underground tunnel for telecommunication equipment. These entrepreneurs decided on the QT they would make it a little bigger, see if they could bring coal to the older buildings and take away ashes. It was never terribly profitable. Not a lot of people knew about it. Certainly not the guys repairing the pilings. They claim it was not on any of the maps they were given. They couldn't get the pilings in the original spot. They moved a few feet away, basically punching a hole through the river into that tunnel, creating a major catastrophe. Early on the morning of April 13th, 1992, City Hall got desperate calls from the building engineers in the older buildings. They said water was coming into their second and third basements at an alarming rate. By 7 a.m., Marshall Fields on State Street, currently Macy's, reported fish on their first basement. Once they heard fish, they knew it was the Chicago River. So they came out here, they saw a huge whirlpool up ahead of Kinsey Street on your left, where the bridge house is. They got barges of aggregate from Prairie Services Material Group. They were throwing that in. There are pictures of them throwing in mattresses. They said it would have been suicide to send a diver down there, although that was part of the ultimate solution. John Kenny of Kenny Construction was on the front page of the paper with these big wader boots. They called it the flood stud. He came up with this quick-drying cement solution that did involve a diver in a wire cage, but that was only after we had to completely evacuate the city, shut down the Board of Trade. They did that, load up the trains as soon as they're full, make every stop on the way out. It was the day of the White Sox opener. I remember coming back into town. It was completely dark down here. They had policemen on horses with flashlights to prevent looting. It's up ahead on your left. As a result of that little episode, most of the older buildings have incurred the cost necessary to definitively seal off from that tunnel. The conservative estimate of damages was $1.98 billion. So now you're very good at Trivial Pursuit. You can point to this yellow bridge house and say, ah, the site of the famous dry flood. We have all sorts of tunnels here, and a lot of this stuff wasn't well documented. It's always a big experiment to find out what you're dealing with. This bridge in the upright position is kind of interesting. It's trunnion bascule, that's French for seesaw, and normally you can't see the counterweight, but you can on this one. It's the yellow stone. They put that up and down about once a year to be in accordance with federal regulations in case they might want to use it for a bus route later. It hasn't been used since the early 1990s. It used to bring paper to the old Sun-Times plant, which is where Trump is currently located. Right now it seems to be most popular as a background for wedding pictures. The wedding party stands on the Kinsey Street Bridge, and then this one's in the background for a gritty urban feel. We get a look at this new building here. We can still see part of the skeleton. Most of the skin is on. You can see how they had to shore up the riverbed here to get these caissons down. This will all be covered up shortly. And coming into view on your left, you get another view of the building. Go to the most popular modern building. It says Nuveen up on top. It's kind of like a moving picture show, reflecting everything going on around it. Very dramatic when there's thunder and lightning, but we're going to pass on that today. Straight ahead in the distance with the white towers is Willis Tower. Used to be the tallest building in the world, the tallest building in North America, currently the tallest building in Chicago. The tallest building in the world right now is Burj Khalifa in Dubai by Chicago architect Adrian Smith, but there's another one fast on its tail called the Kingdom in Saudi Arabia. Coming forward from Willis Tower, you can see a putty-shaped armchair building. Kind of hard to make out, but it has a triangle or a pediment up on top. That's the Civic Opera House. To the left of that, another pyramid or pediment on a 1980s Ralph Johnson, Perkins & Will building. And all the way to your left here, a green pyramid or pediment on the Merchandise Mart. That's an example of what's called contextualism. Buildings having a conversation with each other, wanting to fit in the neighborhood. Not matchy-matchy, but they realize it's not all about them. And on your left, we get another view of the Lantern building here with the white up on top of the blue glass, located on the site of the 1860 Republican Convention. Any of the Americans here remember the candidate from history class, 1860? Went on to become the president during the Civil War, Lincoln, yes. Wigwam Convention Center at the Saguenay Hotel. Okay, this is another double-decker bridge, the Lake Street Bridge. You get the green line and the pink line up on top here. And this building we're going down the South Branch now. This building on your left is what the early buildings looked like, warehouses, grain warehouses. This is the Great Lakes building, or early 1900s Halliburton Roche. Rehab by George Shipwright, who added the reflective glass, the ivy, and the Riverwalk. This is a precursor to what's going to happen after World War II. You can see the structure of the building expressed in the interior. Oh, here's a nice barge coming up from Indiana, I'll bet. One nice thing about this river cruise, you get a sense of what happened here over 300 years, but it's not all in chronological order. Up in one on your left with the stainless steel fluting is a good example of a building designed right after World War II, celebrating all the technology that came out of the war. Steel got lighter, stronger, and less expensive. We have dual glazed windows and they don't open because now we have air conditioning. And believe it or not, it took until after World War II to perfect the technology to get the caissons to bedrock in Chicago. This is a swamp, very difficult to build here. More difficult than Boston, Philadelphia, or New York in many instances. This is the General Growth Properties Building, 1957. Graham Anderson, Probst & White. General Growth Properties is the second largest manager of shopping centers in the U.S. Presumably they're happy with this because we have developers salivating over this site. They'd love to tear this down and put up something taller and more dense. Under our building code, you could go 16 stories high, lot line to lot line, with no variance. We do have a building code in Chicago, but if you do what we like, it's negotiable. And on your left, notice the mask of comedy and tragedy in the French Renaissance style. This is the Civic Opera House. Graham Anderson, Probst & White, 1929. Sometimes called Insull's Throne, after Samuel Insull, who came here from England to be the right-hand man for Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison was a brilliant inventor, think electricity, but he was a disaster as a businessman. So Insull comes to be his secretary, makes a fortune in utilities, loves the opera, maybe one opera singer in particular, so he puts up half the cost of this building. But 1929 was not a good year for Samuel Insull's businesses or the opera. 6 days after the place opened with a performance of Aida, we had the Great Crash, the Great Depression of 1929. Insull dies technically penniless in a Paris subway, but today this is the home of the highly successful Lyric Opera. And take a look at its neighbor, which mimics its shape on the left here. Notice how the architects serrated the corner to get around the bridge house, creating 4 corner views or 16 per floor. This is the Mercantile Exchange building, Fujikawa Johnson and Associates, 1988. The middle originally had no windows because there were 2 giant trading floors for the Mercantile Exchange. But the Mercantile Exchange merged with the Board of Trade, moved into the Board of Trade building, and the developer knew he'd have to punch through the red carnelian granite facade in order to attract tenants, and I understand they have successfully done that. And now I want to call your attention to 4 buildings on your right that are called the Gateway Center. Gateway because this was considered the gateway to the business district. These were designed by Skidmore, Owings, Merrill. After World War II, over a 15-year period, the developers don't own the land. They own the air rights into perpetuity. The railroads own the land. The trains ran on time the whole time these were being built. Gateway 1 and Gateway 2 are identical, and they're good examples of what's called Miesian modernism, after Mies van der Rohe, who came here from Germany. He was director of the Bauhaus. The Nazi government did not like this style of architecture, sometimes called the democratic style. Everyone's got the same size windows, more commonly called the international style. Nothing on that building would tell you it's a Chicago building. Mies was famous for saying, less is more. We don't need any building decoration. The building structure is decoration enough. He said we don't need a new architecture every Monday morning. Figure out how to make something simpler and simpler and simpler. That in itself is an art. So for Miesian modernism, think steel and glass on stilts on a plaza. It's not about mass, it's about volume. It's supposed to look like a glass of water floated in. You're not quite sure where the door is. There's a blurring of the inside and the outside space. Now, to be considered modern, a style very popular after World War II, it doesn't have to be rectilinear, it doesn't have to be steel and glass. It's usually about pure geometric form, the latest industrial material. So this next one, Gateway 3, reinforced concrete and limestone. But notice it's not about symmetry, it's about regularity. All the windows are the same size. The addition on Gateway 3 here reminds a lot of people of the John Hancock building with the triangles or trusses. Remember I said triangles or trusses were an efficient structural technique, reduced the need for columns? Well, this was originally the home of the Mercantile Exchange. So when you had those traders with hand signals, you wouldn't want columns blocking their view. The Mercantile Exchange has long since moved out. There's a health club in there now.